Order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, Joe Robertson.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 1 and 14 together. Last week I visited Kyiv to mark the 4th anniversary of Putin's brutal full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As well as meeting President Zelensky and his ministers, I spoke to civilians who have been targeted throughout this war and told them Britain continues to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting for its freedom and its future. The threats to Ukraine's security are also a threat to the security of Europe and the security of the UK. That is why we stand with Ukraine.
Joe Robertson.
I thank the Secretary of State for that answer, and as we mark the 4-year anniversary of the illegal invasion of Ukraine, of course we salute the fortitude and bravery of the Ukrainian people. But as we see conflicts open up elsewhere in the world, particularly the situation in the Middle East at the moment, how do we ensure that Ukraine continues to receive all the support it needs to determine its own future, and that the future of the Ukrainian people don't slip down the agenda and it becomes another frozen conflict?
Well, the honourable member is exactly right to raise the importance of continuing our focus on Ukraine. This is about our security as well as Ukraine's security, and it's why last week I announced additional support for Ukraine's energy infrastructure, additional sanctions to keep the pressure on Russia, particularly on its oil and gas system and its shadow fleet, and why, too, we are continuing to provide Ukraine with significant military support as well. We'll stand with Ukraine today, tomorrow and for as long as it takes.
Rachel Gilmour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to declare that I returned from Ukraine last week as part of a cross-party delegation, and my register of interest will be updated to reflect this. The newspapers, the television is full of pictures this week of people hunkering in bunkers in the Middle East. It's worth us remembering that the people of Ukraine have been doing that for the last 4 years. The Foreign Secretary will, of course, be aware of Moscow and Tehran's close relationship, and that Russia continues to deploy Iranian-manufactured Shahed drones to terrorise Ukraine's population. With the crisis in the Middle East intensifying, I wondered if she could set out how the government now assesses the implications of these recent developments for Russia's war in Ukraine.
Well, the honourable member is right to point out that Iran has been a key enabler of Russia's war in Ukraine by providing the thousands of the Shahed-type drones used to inflict terror on the Ukrainian people and now being used to launch indiscriminate attacks across the Middle East and the Gulf. And that is why, as well as we are working with Ukrainian expertise to provide support for partners in the Gulf, but also why we recognise the importance of continuing to provide that support and to work to develop that expertise with Ukraine. They have shown remarkable resilience and they have been underestimated for too long.
Griffith.
Much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And like the previous Member of Parliament, I would just like to note that my register of interests will likewise be updated following the support from Friends of Ukraine on our visit last week. It was very, very good to see the Foreign Secretary there in Kyiv last Tuesday. Very, very sad commemoration of the 4th year of the full-scale invasion. And the Ukrainian people remind us time and time again, it's not just about territory, it's about their very identity. But one of the things we heard about on our visit was the appalling, inhumane treatment of Ukrainians who've been taken as prisoners of war by Putin, with constant violations of the Geneva Conventions and with reports of torture and near starvation. So what talks has she had and what more can she do to raise this issue in international circles and put pressure on the Russian regime to treat prisoners more humanely?
Can I say I welcome my honourable friend's point, and the fact that there was such a strong cross-party delegation to Ukraine for the 4th anniversary of the invasion, which showed that cross-party commitment to the support for Ukraine. And like my honourable friend, I did meet with those who had the most horrendous stories to tell of having been held and detained during the war by Russian troops, and also the most horrendous stories of torture as well. We are providing support for survivors and also support to secure evidence that could be used in future prosecutions as well, because we must hold perpetrators to account.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Secretary mentioned the importance of Russian oil and gas and how we must disrupt the activities of the shadow fleet in her opening answer. Can she confirm that she's working with allies to ensure that as much is being done to get people off using Russian oil and gas because of the importance that has in reducing flows of cash that are the source of the Russian war effort?
I can confirm to my honourable friend we are doing exactly that, raising that with discussions with colleagues and partners right across the world as well, because we know that Russia has continued to use oil and gas to fuel its war machine, but that is also why we are strengthening the operations and the sanctions and the pressure on the Russian shadow fleet as well, and we will also continue to pursue further action in future. We would like to see international support for a maritime services ban.
Wendy Morton, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Ukraine war passes its fourth year, we continue to salute the bravery and the heroism of the people of Ukraine as they fight for their independence and freedom. This is the moment, though, for the government to spearhead a new campaign with our allies to starve Russia of the funds it needs to wage war. It's clear that we need to not only target the shadow fleet, but the refineries in Turkey, India and China, buying Russian crude so that they rapidly diversify. So will the government now take action with our allies to put huge new pressure on those refineries? With the foundations of the Russian economy crumbling away, this action would make it much harder for Putin to sustain the costs of his war.
Well, on my visit to Kyiv last week, I announced nearly 300 sanctions, new sanctions to target Russian revenue streams and military supply chains. We are going more broadly, not just around the shadow fleet and directly on oil and gas companies in Russia itself, but also targeting those that might support them in third countries as well. But this was our largest Russian sanctions package since 2022, and it's important that we get other countries to support that as well.
Andy MacDonald.
Number 2, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 2 and 21 together. The UK strongly condemns the expansion of illegal settlements and the recent Israeli Security Cabinet decisions that introduce sweeping extensions to their control of the West Bank. These actions threaten peace and stability and undermine the 20-point plan. They risk making a two-state solution impossible to achieve. Our position is clear and unequivocal. The Israeli government must stop the expansion of settlements, it must stop the threats of forcible displacement and annexation, and it must stop the unacceptable levels of settler violence.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer. But since December 2015, 19 new settlements have been approved, bringing the coalition's total to 68 in 3 years, and around 210 overall, housing 750,000 settlers. Last month, the Israeli Cabinet approved measures to designate large areas as state property and resume land registration in Area C, de jure annexation. These steps defy International Court of Justice advisory opinions and dispossess thousands of Palestinians. So given the scale of sanctions that the UK is willing to impose on Russia, when will the government impose meaningful trade measures, arms controls and sanctions that match the scale of Israel's illegal actions?
My honourable friend is right in his characterisation in the increase in settlements. That increase has also been accompanied by a very concerning increase in settler violence itself. I know many members will have been shocked by some of the footage that they have seen of these incidents. The Foreign Secretary has raised these issues directly, including the risks of instability that they cause, with Israel's Foreign Minister Saar, in New York last month. We will not accept attempts to advance settlement expansion under the cover of regional instability. We will consider concrete steps in accordance with international law to counter this expansion.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last year, the Israeli government issued nearly 10,000 units of settlement housing tenders, which was more than the combined total of tenders over the previous 6 years. The extremists in Netanyahu's cabinet clearly have the explicit intention of undermining any prospect of a viable Palestinian state, let alone a two-state solution. Now, the Minister says he condemns this expansion and he's considering actions to take. But will he do the right thing now and introduce a full ban on all trade with illegal settlements in the West Bank to show that this government is truly committed to pursuing a two-state solution? Yeah.
This government is truly committed to pursuing a two-state solution. It has been at the heart of our policy in relation to Israel and Palestine for the entire duration of our time in government. As the Honourable Lady will know, I have stood at this dispatch box and announced 3 waves of sanctions, and she will have heard my remarks in my previous question, I'm sure, carefully.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Member Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The British government recognised Palestine last summer, and that was greatly welcomed around the world. The concern now is that Israel may be about to annex the West Bank. And if Israel does that, then where is Palestine? And the Minister spoke last week and said that they were considering concrete steps, and he said that again today. I just wondered what they were.
I thank my right honourable friend for the important question. I know she is extremely focused, rightly, on the deterioration of the situation in the West Bank. She focuses correctly on the threat of annexation. We oppose that absolutely, as do our American counterparts, as I'm sure she is aware. I'm not in a position to provide further commentary on what the steps I alluded to might yet be, for the reasons that we've rehearsed in this chamber many times. We have taken action, Mr Speaker, including the 3 rounds of sanctions that I described, and we will continue to take action while the situation continues to deteriorate.
So Desmond Swain.
The Minister is absolutely right. Israel must stop. What estimate has he made of the time that we have before a separate Palestinian state becomes geographically and economically utterly untenable?
I thank the honourable member and my predecessor for the important question. We have pointed to a whole range of areas of concern in relation to the viability of a Palestinian state. One which has not received mention so far in our exchanges, but which is vitally important, is the E1 development. The British government is deeply concerned by the speed with which the Israeli government is proceeding with a project which we oppose absolutely and completely. It is clearly designed in order to try and split 2 parts of a contiguous Palestinian territory. We oppose it, and we will continue to do so.
Chair of the International Development Committee, Sarah Champion.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The rapid growth in Israeli settlements in recent months has been fuelled by settled violence that not only goes unpunished, but receives tacit support from the Israeli government. The UK government continues to avoid responding to the International Court of Justice's 2024 advisory opinion condemning Israel's forcible transfer of Palestinians, a war crime. Last month, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights noticed that the forcible transfer of Palestinians from their homes in the West Bank raises concerns of ethnic cleansing. Does the Minister agree with his analysis?
As ever, I thank my honourable friend and the Chairman for her important questions. I just wish to clarify quickly, the British government opposes forced displacement in Palestine. That has been our long-held position. And while, of course, we're due to update Parliament on the wider issues that are posed by the ICJ advisory opinion, I wouldn't wish there to be any ambiguity about our position. We opposed forcible displacement, and of course there must be accountability and justice for all crimes committed right across Palestinian and Israeli territory.
Dr. Ellicher.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister says he is concerned by the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements and the expansion of settler violence. He says he is considering concrete steps. He refers to previous actions. It's now many months since the last concrete action by this government. Minister, actions speak louder than words. It is now way past time to end all settlement trade and impose new sanctions on those responsible for this violence.
Good question.
Mr. Speaker, we have taken a range of steps. We continue to take steps, including raising these issues both with our partners and directly with the Israeli government.
That's awesome.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'll answer questions 3 and 12 together. When I visited the Sudan border a month ago, I promised the women that I met in the Adre camp that I would take their voice to the United Nations, and that the world needed to listen to Sudanese women, not the military men who perpetuate this war. And that is what I have done 2 weeks ago, chairing a dedicated session of the United Nations Security Council, where we considered the horrendous fact-finding mission's report on El Fasher, and also ensured that Sudanese women's voices could be heard. As I told the Council members, we need the renewed effort from across the globe to end this brutal war.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for her answer. With half of Sudan's population under 18 and millions of children growing up amid widespread violence, Sudan is confronting what many now describe as the world's largest child protection emergency. In that context, what concrete steps will the Department take to promote and defend the UN's Children and Armed Conflict mandate so that protection of children in Sudan remains a sustained diplomatic priority across the UN Security Council and the Human Rights Council?
I can tell my honourable friend that we continue to champion the UN Children and Armed Conflict mandate and its monitoring work as well. And it's clear that children are the innocent victims of this horrendous and brutal war, and that is why the world must not look away from Sudan. It's why we need a ceasefire, it's why we need to prevent the arms flows, and it's why we need to continue the humanitarian support from across the globe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that conflict can disproportionately affect women and children and exacerbates gender-based violence. We cannot let this crisis in Sudan be ignored. There has been an alarming rise in gender-based violence and sexual abuse against women and girls. Can the Foreign Secretary tell me what further steps her department is taking to tackle this horrific abuse against women and girls in Sudan at this time of conflict?
Well, my honourable friend is right that the scale of the use of rape as a weapon of war in Sudan is truly horrific. 2 weeks ago, prior to the Security Council briefing, I convened an event in New York in the UN building to include 4 women speakers who have been working to tackle sexual violence in Sudan, and also to hear through video testimony from a Sudanese woman who has been working to tackle levels of sexual violence and provide support to survivors in Chad. And I announced a new £20 million programme to support survivors of rape and sexual violence in Sudan. The voices of Sudanese women must be heard.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that the Foreign Secretary will read the evidence from Samaritan's Purse to the International Development Committee last week, which reiterated the issues on sexual violence. But we also heard that in refugee camps, many people have to be naked because they've had no option but to sell their clothes to get food. I'm sure she agrees that is completely and utterly unacceptable. In her last statement, she said that she was seeking to engage with the African Union and to bring them more into a participation in bringing a resolution to the conflict. Has she made any progress in that regard?
Well, I will certainly look further at the evidence, the horrendous accounts that the honourable member describes on this. We are establishing with international partners a coalition for atrocity prevention and justice to work on Sudan, to work together on both the preventing atrocities and also gathering the evidence as well. And we have been pursuing some of the findings in the UN's report on El Fasher, which talk about systematic starvation, torture, killings, rape, and also deliberate ethnic targeting. The Honourable Member adds further horrendous accounts to that, and it's why it's so important not only to pursue these atrocities, but also to ensure that there is basic humanitarian support, and it's why we are prioritising Sudan as for humanitarian support as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Secretary has referred to the UN report published on February the 19th, which said that the horrific events in El Fasher had all the hallmarks of genocide. Does the Foreign Secretary agree with that assessment?
Well, the account in the report is truly appalling and shocking. It does describe deliberate ethnic targeting towards particular groups, alongside some of the most horrendous accounts of torture and also rape being deliberately used as a weapon of conflict as well. Our long-standing position of successive British governments is that any formal determination on genocide is a matter for the courts. However, we should be very clear. The evidence of atrocities committed by the armed forces across Sudan is staggering and horrendous, and the perpetrators must be held to account.
Blake Stevens.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK-United States relationship has been a cornerstone of both our security and our prosperity for over a century, and we will never turn away from it. The Foreign Secretary and I have wide-ranging discussions with our counterparts on a regular basis, and indeed recently we were with governors from across the United States discussing economic ties in the last week. And the Trade Secretary speaks regularly to his US counterparts, most recently with the Trade Representative, where he reinforced the importance of delivering on our economic prosperity deal.
Blake Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for that response? Given the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran without British involvement, and this government seems increasingly at odds with the US in relation to Diego Garcia, can the Minister assure me that this government's actions are not damaging the special relationship and increasing the likelihood that further tariffs will be imposed on the UK, driving up costs for the great British public?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't accept what he's saying. Our relationship with the United States is strong. It has endured, it continues to endure, and it will endure into the future on both the economic and the security front. And indeed, of course, we were the first to strike a deal with the US administration which removed tariffs on UK aerospace exports, secured reduced tariffs for cars, and that saved manufacturers hundreds of millions and protected jobs across this country.
Alan Thompson.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 5 and 11 together. China's imposition of the national security law on Hong Kong has significantly eroded the rights and freedoms of Hong Kongers. We remain deeply concerned about this, and our most recent assessment was set out in the last 6-monthly report to Parliament in October, and the next report will be published soon. On his recent visit to Beijing, the Prime Minister raised our concerns at the highest level, including with President Xi, both about the overall situation in Hong Kong and about the specific case of Jimmy Lai.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many people who have come to us from Hong Kong have made their homes in Long Eaton, in my constituency. Their children are thriving in our local schools, new businesses are being established, and a vibrant community is taking shape. Could the Minister outline what further steps the Government is taking, working in partnership with local councils and members of this House, to support the continued integration of Hong Kongers into our towns and communities, and to ensure that those who have chosen to settle in Long Eaton feel fully welcomed as part of our community?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for his question and indeed his work in his constituency. And I'm proud the UK has welcomed around 200,000 Hong Kongers since 2021, and we will unequivocally continue to uphold our commitment to them. As he will know, their contribution enriches our economy and our society, including in Long Eaton, and we remain committed to ensuring they feel safe, supported and valued. Indeed, for 5 years, the Welcome Programme has delivered successful integration for the BNO community, and mainstream provisions will continue to be available.
Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to the situation on the ground in Hong Kong, there remains evidence of transnational repression being taken against Hong Kong nationals living overseas, including here in the United Kingdom. Could the Minister provide an update on the work being taken across government departments on this issue, and the measures she is taking to end the deliberate targeting of opposition voices here in the UK?
Mr. Speaker, any attempts by foreign governments to intimidate or to harm critics overseas are unacceptable. Freedom of speech and other fundamental rights of all people in the United Kingdom are protected by law. Ministers have raised these issues, including the arrest warrants placed on individuals in the United Kingdom by Hong Kong police with the Chinese authorities. And it is important to note that training and guidance on state threats activity is now being offered to all 45 territorial police forces across the United Kingdom.
Traian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Hackney South has just raised a particular case that I'm aware of, and I don't want to steal her thunder on the issues of it. But I will say there is a real issue here with what is happening in Hong Kong. They have trashed the Sino-British Agreement. They no longer use common law. And at the end of it all, they are abusing every single system. When is the government going to deal with these deficiencies by sanctioning somebody? America has sanctioned many people, many other countries have too, but the UK that used to run Hong Kong has sanctioned absolutely nobody. Surely we should do so now.
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Member will be aware of the concerns we have that indeed in relation to China's breach of the Sino-British Declaration as well are laid out clearly in our report, our 6-monthly report on Hong Kong. There will be a further report coming shortly, but let me just say that Hong Kong is required to ensure, for example, that national security legislation upholds rights and freedoms as is set out in the basic law. And indeed, we have repeatedly called on Beijing to repeal the national security law and release all individuals charged under it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following on from that question, bounties have been placed on the heads of pro-democracy activists living in Hong Kong. A shocking act of transnational aggression. Can I add my voice to the one from the Right Honourable Member from Woodford Green and Chingford to say, when will the government use our Magnitsky sanction regime against those in Hong Kong and Beijing responsible for the unacceptable targeting of Hong Kong pro-democracy campaigners? It is time that we use those sanctions.
I thank the Honourable Member for her question, and she will know that any attempts to coerce or intimidate or harm those in the UK by foreign governments are utterly unacceptable. Indeed, these arrest warrants and bounties encourage reckless behaviour on UK soil, and they damage Hong Kong's international reputation. And it is important that we continue to address these issues, and indeed we will be looking further at the situation and publishing our 6-monthly report on Hong Kong soon.
Dame Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary.
Speaker. Last month, the Foreign Secretary held an unpublicised meeting in Munich with Wang Yi, which we only know about because the Chinese Communist Party boasted that she told them that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer's visit to China, was a complete success with fruitful results in terms of UK-China relations. So can the Minister, on behalf of the Foreign Secretary, confirm whether or not human rights of those living in Hong Kong were raised? And with Jimmy Lai languishing in prison, the CCP looking to toughen up the Hong Kong national security law, and Hong Kongers living in Britain with bounties on their heads, as we've heard today, on what basis was the Prime Minister's visit a complete success, given how little the UK got? It was a complete failure, wasn't it?
Mr. Speaker, my Right Honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, had many meetings with counterparts on very important issues of national and international security in Munich, and indeed raising a number of issues, including on Jimmy Lai. But let me just say, Mr. Speaker, that in the 14 years that the opposition were in charge, they had almost as many different policies towards China during that time. They talked about state threats, but delayed the essential reform of our outdated security laws. And in May 2021, Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Foreign Secretary launched her consultation on the new legislation, but it took more than 2 years to get that new National Security Act passed into law, leaving our country without the powers needed to prosecute such cases.
Priti Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, clearly the Minister's desperate and having to go backwards rather than move forwards to address the situation now. And for her information, China oppresses Hong Kongers, refuses to free Jimmy Lai, supports Russia and Iran in their barbaric actions to undermine freedom and democracy. These are issues that the government should actually take a grip off now. They plot, they spy, they undermine our own security. But rather than kowtowing to China, when will her government wake up and deal with the threat posed by the CCP and put China on the enhanced tier of furs? And when will she start taking some action and expel CCP diplomats to show our disgust about their appalling actions when it comes to transnational repression?
Mr. Speaker, the government has not made any decision yet on whether China will be added on the enhanced tier, but she will know that we condemn in the strongest terms the politically motivated prosecution of British citizen Jimmy Lai. This remains a priority for this government, and she is fully aware of that.
Rankin.
Number 6, please, sir.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member refers to sections 3 and 8 of the UK's 2025 UK-Palestine MOU, which is clear on our commitment to support the PA's reform agenda on education. We welcomed President Abbas's pledge in 2025 to continue reforms in line with UNESCO standards. The Foreign Secretary and I have pressed him and Prime Minister Mustafa on this personally. An external review has been commissioned to verify the implementation of those reform commitments. I will report to the House with our assessment when it is completed in the coming months.
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Palestinian Authority has given the British government repeat assurances that its textbooks are being reformed. You would have thought this would be a minimum requirement for the recognition of a Palestinian state. Yet in my office, I have an Arabic language textbook currently being used in the West Bank that describes Arab fighters using explosive belts to, quote, turn their bodies into fire, burning the Zionist tank, accompanied by an image of a gunman shooting Jews riding a tank. This is aimed at 14 years old. Is the Minister aware that this is going on, and does he have any faith in the Palestinian Authority that it can change its ways?
Mr. Speaker, as I said, there is going to be an external assessment. I'm aware that in the process of education reform, which is being led by some of our friends in the European Union, they are going grade by grade. So, as I understand it, there has been considerable progress on grade 12, and they are looking at some of the other grades. The honourable member is very welcome to send me the textbook if he wants, and he can confirm which grade it is.
Dr. Peter Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I accept that there are problems with the curriculum in the Palestinian schools. But the eyes of the world are now distracted, and settlement expansion continues as far as we can tell. Now, I am concerned that when the dust settles and the rubble is cleared, the viability of the Palestinian state will be significantly jeopardised. So does the Minister share my firm belief that what is going on doesn't really represent the will of the Israeli people?
It's a bit of a stretch question.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House will recognise the authority with which my honourable friend speaks. I know that he is right, that violent settlement expansion is not the will of most Israelis. Polling reflects that time and time again. As the Israeli public approach Israeli elections, I hope that there will be a discussion in Israel about the appalling nature of this violence and this expansion.
Wendy Morton, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Palestinian Authority continues to show an absolute disregard for the MOU, with deeply disturbing and anti-Semitic content still being promoted in their schools. How is the UK government monitoring this and ensuring that no UK taxpayers' money is being used? And I'd like to say that with pay for slay continuing, can the Minister tell the House, did he raise these concerns with the Palestinian Authority when he met their ambassador last week? What's his assessment of the payments being made? And what direct action is he taking to stop it, such as withholding payments until this vile practice ceases?
Mr. Speaker, I've tried to answer as precisely as possible on all of the sections of the MOU, and if she has a particular area she would like to raise, then I'm very happy to address it as I did with the honourable member for Windsor. I can confirm that I raised these questions in my most recent interaction with the Palestinian ambassador. She refers to the area sometimes described in public as pay-to-slay, the Tamkeen system, that is also being externally audited by a United States auditor, and once we have that audit, we will be in a full position to provide a further update to the House.
Gregory Stafford.
Question 7, sir.
Well, thank you. Minister.
Mr Speaker, let me thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The UK condemns in the strongest terms the politically motivated persecution of British citizen Jimmy Lai. We continue to call for his immediate release, for full access to independent medical professionals, and indeed for all necessary treatment. The Prime Minister raised Jimmy Lai when he met President Xi in January, and we will continue to raise his case on every opportunity.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Jimmy Lai now faces a jail term described by ministers as an effective life sentence. It's clear, Mr Speaker, that Jimmy Lai's life sentence is a direct reflection on this government's weak policy towards China. So will the Minister tell us what clear steps she and the Prime Minister are taking, and more importantly, what sanctions she and the Prime Minister are going to bring on the Chinese to ensure that Jimmy Lai is released and his case is not forgotten?
Mr Speaker, we continue to keep sanctions under close review, and it would not be appropriate to speculate on any future designations, as to do so, the honourable member will know, could reduce the impact of those designations. But he will know, in relation to Jimmy Lai, that we're not going to get into the details of any private discussions, but the government will continue to raise Jimmy Lai's case with every opportunity, as the Foreign Secretary has done, and the previous Foreign Secretary also did, and the Prime Minister has done, and diplomats from our Consulate General in Hong Kong have indeed attended all court proceedings on a regular basis and continue to press for consular access.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sticking with detentions in China, last week I had the great honour of meeting Grace Jin Drexel, the daughter of Pastor Ezra Jin, who, along with 18 other pastors from the Zion House Church, was arrested or detained by the Chinese authorities last October under the very vague charge of illegal use of information online. Basically, they had an online church service. Can I ask my right honourable friend, what can the government do to advocate for the release of all of the Zion Church leaders and to promote freedom of religion or belief for all people in China?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and indeed reports from within China about the detention of Zion House Church leaders is a very worrying indication of further persecution of Christians in China. It is the case that this government continues to engage with China on the issue of human rights and the freedom of belief, and we will continue to champion the freedom of religion and belief for all, and to uphold the rights to this universal freedom through our positions at the UN, in the G7 and through our bilateral engagements.
Steph Aquarelle.
Question 8, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I welcome the progress that many overseas territories have made on financial transparency. St Helena, Montserrat and Gibraltar now have fully public registers of beneficial ownership, while the Cayman Islands and Turks and Caicos Islands have implemented legitimate interest access registers. But I've also been clear with those where progress has not been quick or comprehensive enough, including the British Virgin Islands. And at the Joint Ministerial Council in November, I pressed for further progress and agreed to provide technical level support for that work. We will reconvene later this month, Mr Speaker, to assess the latest position, and of course we reserve the right to consider all options if progress is not made. Of course, we prefer to work in constructive cooperation, recognising the wide range of constitutional arrangements, but there are crucial issues here for tackling illicit finance and indeed our national security.
Speaker, perhaps I can help with that assessment. Transparency International uncovered at least 160 cases since 2022 of luxury yachts being transferred into or out of Russia, registered to companies in British overseas territories. While brave Ukrainians are defending their country from a brutal invasion, Putin's cronies are joyriding their multi-million-pound yachts enabled by the likes of the BVI. Does this sicken the Foreign Secretary and the Minister as much as it sickens me? Can he tell certain overseas territories that we are fed up with their excuses, fed up with their shieldily evil regimes and tax dodgers, and they must deliver transparency now.
Well, I welcome the work of Transparency International and others in sharing and shedding a light on these issues. These are exactly the concerns that I've raised directly with Overseas Territories governments. They're exactly the concerns that I've expressed in this place, and we're going to work to ensure rapid progress on these issues.
Question number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for her question. Tens of thousands of children have been killed, injured, orphaned or separated from their families during this conflict. The UK has medically evacuated 50 children for treatment in the UK. Help on the required scale can only be delivered on the ground in Gaza. We are providing £81 million in humanitarian and early recovery support this year, including social protection services, which have so far supported over 335,000 Palestinian children.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is estimated that 40,000 children in Gaza have lost either one or both of their parents in the appalling war of recent years, leaving many as orphans without the love and protection that they need in one of the most dangerous places on the planet. As the crisis engulfs the region once again and vital aid is still being blocked, what assurances can the Minister make that the UK will play a leading role in supporting those children in the long term after all of the horrors that they have had to endure?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. INGOs remain indispensable to the UN-led humanitarian response, and we have supported key INGO partners, including through the Disaster Emergency Committee in January. We marked the UK's £3 million aid match for the Middle East appeal. In total, we have provided £13 million since the appeal began. On the 30th of December last year, Mr. Speaker, the UK led a statement with 9 other countries to underline the vital role INGOs play in Palestine. We continue to engage these organisations who have been impacted by new registration requirements, and we have raised them directly with the Government of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amidst the illegal attack on Iran by America and Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu has closed all the border crossings entering into Gaza. What does the Minister know of this? Because food, humanitarian aid is once again being blocked.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question? We would like all borders open as quickly as possible and not in a phased process, including Rafah, and we are making representations to the Israeli government in that point.
We'll see what.
Question number 10, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, in recent days we have seen Iran attack multiple countries that did not attack them. And just as Iran is a threat to its own, to the region and to the UK's allies, Iran is also a threat to its own people. And time and again it has responded to legitimate protests with brutal violence, as we saw in January when thousands of protesters were killed. That is why last month, alongside international partners, the UK led efforts to secure a special session of the UN Human Rights Council and imposed a sweeping package of sanctions to hold Iran to account for its human rights violations. And yesterday, the Prime Minister set out the action we are taking in response to Iran's attacks on Gulf partners where UK citizens are currently residing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not content with suppressing its own people, the Iranian regime now lashes out at civilians and our allies across the region. The new head of the IRGC is an internationally wanted terrorist implicated in the 1994 attack on the AMIA in Buenos Aires, and also responsible for the protest repressions in 2022 against the women, life and freedom protests in Iran. Can I urge the Foreign Secretary to urge the Home Secretary to implement the Jonathan Hall framework so that we can prescribe the IRGC as soon as possible? And can I also ask her to implement sanctions on those responsible for the bloody crackdowns in Iran, including on Ali Larijani, Secretary of the National Supreme Council?
Well, my honourable friend will know that I, as Home Secretary, commissioned the Jonathan Hall review exactly because I thought that the legislation might need to be strengthened. He has concluded that it does need to be strengthened to broaden existing counter-terrorism legislation to state and state-linked threats. We will be taking that forward, and he will also know that we keep all prescription decisions under very close review.
Robert General.
Speaker, when some of us campaigned for Hezbollah to be prescribed in full, Foreign Office officials and others said that that was impossible because it would harm diplomatic relations. That was overcome. The same spurious argument was made with respect to Hamas. That was overcome. Imagine how foolish our country would look today if we had not prescribed Hezbollah and Hamas in full. The same argument has been made by the last government and by this government with respect to the IRGC. Will the Foreign Secretary be clear that she will not stand in the way of the full prescription of the IRGC, so these dangerous criminals who harm our own people and our allies around the world have no place, no home in the United Kingdom?
Well, I would just point out to the Right Honourable Member that I take the threats on UK streets immensely seriously, but he was a Home Office Minister and he was a Cabinet Minister during an entire period when Iran-backed, state-backed threats had been seen on UK streets, and he did nothing to strengthen the legislation in so many years in government that this government is now taking forward to strengthen that legislation.
Alan Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Mr. Speaker, it is currently unclear whether the turmoil unleashed by Trump and Netanyahu's unilateral military action will bring freedom and security for Iranians who deserve a better future. But we can be certain, Mr. Speaker, that the IRGC will seek to crush domestic opposition and, if given the chance, to export terror abroad, including to the UK streets. Members of the Iranian diaspora here and the UK Jewish community have expressed their fears of attack. So, echoing the calls of members across this House, will the Foreign Secretary work with her colleagues to heed the calls of Liberal Democrats and other parties to bring forward emergency legislation to enact the whole review and prescribe the IRGC?
Well, I can tell the honourable member, first of all, that we are taking forward the legislation that Jonathan Hall has recommended, but I can also tell him we take immensely seriously any threats that are Iran-backed on UK streets. And that is why our counter-terrorism police work extremely closely with our security services, and they are pursuing live cases and have been for some time where Iran is suspected to be involved. They will continue to do so to keep all of our communities safe, but particularly our Jewish communities that have been so targeted.
Come to topicals, Lauren Edwards.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister updated the House on the conflict in the Middle East and Gulf. And overnight we have continued to see Iranian strikes on Gulf nations. Mr. Speaker, the safety and security of British nationals is our top priority, and I want to update the House on support for British citizens who are in the region. As of this morning, 130,000 British nationals have now signed up to the Register Your Presence programme, which is vital to the Foreign Office's ability to know where people are and to provide updates and advice. Members will know that in many of these countries the airspace is still closed, but I'm in close contact with my counterparts across the region, speaking again yesterday with the UAE on the excellent support that they are providing and some of the departures that they are now securing as this becomes viable. And we are also working with airlines on increasing capacity out of Muscat for British nationals, with priority for vulnerable nationals. And a government charter flight will fly from Muscat in the coming days, prioritising vulnerable nationals. But British nationals in Oman must wait to be contacted by the Foreign Office regarding these options, and we will continue to work 24/7 on supporting British nationals in the region. I would tell the House this is a very fast-moving situation. We have unprecedented numbers of British nationals in the region, and I will continue to update members and affected British nationals as the situation evolves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all deeply concerned about the escalating situation in the Gulf. Following the PM's statement yesterday, has the Secretary of State had any discussions with her counterparts in the US, Europe or Israel about measures to secure any nuclear or radiological material in Iran in light of the possibility of its trafficking due to current events?
Foreign Secretary.
It's right to raise this issue. It is extremely important that Iran is not able to develop a nuclear weapon. There are also obviously concerns about the security of materials as well. It is an issue, obviously, we continue to work closely with our operational partners.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Peter Patel.
Mr. Speaker, the government's indecision on how to deal with Iran has left the UK weaker and undermined our own security. But as the House has already started to discuss, prescribing the IRGC will strengthen our position. So I actually prescribed Hamas when I was Home Secretary, so I've dealt with state prescriptions. The Foreign Secretary, in her role as Home Secretary last year, spoke about bringing forward the Hall Review and the recommendations and to bring forward a series of powers. When will she and her government, and I'm going to make a suggestion here for her, bring forward the parliamentary time that is essential so we can have emergency legislation to prescribe the IRGC? And if she desperately needs parliamentary time that is not timetabled so far, would she scrap the Chagos surrender bill so we can legislate to do this now?
Well, again, I just point out we have had a record number of former Conservative and still Conservative Home Office ministers coming forward to call for things that they failed to do while they were in government. I would say to her, this government is determined to bring forward the legislation to take forward the Jonathan Hall Review, but it is legislation that the Conservative government could have done over very many years in order to strengthen the legislation. And we will also strengthen the action on our streets and internationally on the Iranian threat.
Dame Peter Patel.
Mr. Speaker, events in the Middle East remind us how important our collective defence and security at the base of Diego Garcia is and the whole of the Chagos archipelago, and nothing should be done to undermine that. Now, given the latest comments from the President of the United States on the importance of the base and the folly, Mr. Speaker, in giving sovereignty away, will the Foreign Secretary finally do what's right for the defence of our country and British taxpayers and British Chagosians and tear up the terrible Labour Chagos surrender treaty?
Just say to the Shadow Foreign Secretary that this government believes that decisions should be made in the UK national interest, according to UK values, not according to any other government's national interest, whether that be across Europe, the US, the Middle East or beyond. And when it comes to the issues around the Chagos, we will take decisions in the interests of our national security. She knows the national security issues that are at stake here, and instead of simply travelling around the world trying to undermine the UK's national security and trying to undermine the decisions that we are taking, perhaps she should actually start standing up for the UK's national interest instead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My 8-year-old grandson, Ronnie, along with his mum and dad, spent Sunday night on the bathroom floor in RAF Akrotiri until they got the all clear at 3 a.m. in the morning. Will the Foreign Secretary assure me that this country will not be dragged into another illegal war by the Americans, putting the lives of British servicemen and women and millions of innocent civilians in danger?
Well, I want to praise the UK armed forces that we have in Akrotiri for their huge professionalism, for the work that they do to defend UK security and our national security as well. We have already increased the deployment with additional defensive capabilities, including radar, F-35 jets and air defence and counter-drone systems, and we work closely with the Cypriot government as well on safety and security issues too.
Callum Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister argued that the government was distinguishing between defensive and offensive operations by US bombers making use of UK bases. On issues of such gravity, clarity is essential to avoid mission creep. So can the Foreign Secretary confirm that the UK will agree the target and monitor the outcome of each of these US sorties, Will the government report on this to the Intelligence and Security Committee? And can she confirm that if one were found to fit anything other than a missile battery or missile store, the UK would suspend its agreement for the use of its bases?
Well, we have long-standing operational arrangements for partners and allies that we work closely with, and we assure those are implemented. But what I'd say to him is the principles that we follow here are about ensuring that there is a lawful basis for action, ensuring that it is also in UK interest. But at a time when we have seen strikes from the Iranian regime on countries that were not involved in this conflict, where we have 300,000 British citizens currently resident, were we not to take action to support and protect those British citizens when they might be threatened with attack? I think we would find that extremely difficult to justify.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was a pleasure to see the Foreign Secretary at last month's Munich Security Conference, where, despite warm words on all sides, the trust gap between the European Union and the United States was absolutely palpable, impacting discussions on defence, procurement, technology sovereignty, Greenland, the Middle East, etc. Could she tell me how she sees the UK's role? Should we be trying to restore trust? We have our own trust gap. Should we pick a side, European Union versus United States, or do we forge an independent path, dependent on neither?
Well, the UK's task must always be to act in the UK's national interest according to UK values. But at the heart of that national interest and those values are things like the NATO alliance, the transatlantic alliance, as well as our partnership with other European countries and other countries on our defence as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am deeply concerned about the British service personnel who are being put at risk by attacks from Iran. With US Secretary of State Marco Rubio now warning that the hardest hits are yet to come, can the Foreign Secretary confirm whether there are any British personnel on any US ships which are being used to attack Iran?
Well, what I can tell her is that we take the safety of UK personnel immensely seriously, and I do want to pay tribute to the service that they show for our country. It is why we have already increased some of the deployments in order to ensure that, for example, in Cyprus there is added radar and air protection as well, and we will always continue to do so, and we ensure that operational matters happen in their normal way.
Andrew Lewin.
Mr. Speaker, at the Munich Security Conference, the Prime Minister rightly said that we must do more to work with our allies to build our collective European security. Given that moral imperative, can I ask my right honourable friend if there is an ambition for the UK and the EU to reopen negotiations on UK access to the EU's safe defence mechanism?
My honourable friend asks a very important question. We are absolutely committed to strengthening our defence cooperation with the EU and European partners, and of course with NATO as the bedrock. We negotiated in good faith on SAFE, but the terms weren't in the UK's national interest, but we're going to continue to engage constructively across a range of areas of cooperation.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the Foreign Secretary faces real problems in terms of the settlement she's received from her neighbour next door. But given the last 20 years have led to almost eradication of polio and excellent work on malaria, will she prioritise those programmes to ensure that we don't go back on releasing polio and malaria once again across the globe?
Can I thank him for his question, and can I assure him and the House that we are prioritising those areas of continued support within the health sphere of development funding?
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member of the NUJ Parliamentary Group, I know it's vital to protect journalists. Sadly, hundreds of Palestinian journalists have been slaughtered during the Gazan genocide. But as Britain is the co-chair of the Media Freedom Coalition, can the Minister explain what steps the government's taken to safeguard journalists on the ground in the Middle East? And can he encourage international governments, including Israel, to allow the global media to do their job and for journalists to be protected and not pay the price of war?
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question? We take this extremely seriously. Journalists on the front line are often how we find out across the world where atrocities have taken place. Can I reassure her that even tomorrow I'm hosting a Media Freedoms Coalition discussion and will always remain a priority for the UK Government?
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's been 31 days since I wrote to the Secretary of State calling on her to reimburse the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead for costs incurred during 3 state visits last year, some £350,000. Whilst to the Government this may be a rounding error, it isn't to the ratepayers of Windsor. We are very proud to host, but these are properly national costs. Will the Secretary of State do the right thing and please sort this?
Can I thank him for his question? There is an Estimates Day tomorrow, perhaps he'd like to raise it. On the wider point, he and I have been in correspondence on this point, and discussions are indeed ongoing over those costs.
Mr Swallow.
Mr Speaker, the International Road Assessment Programme based in Bracknell has saved well over 500,000 lives from road crashes around the world, a significant contribution to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and a real success story of British expertise on the global stage. What can this government do to champion the work of IRAP more effectively?
Can I thank him for his question, Mr Speaker? Improving road safety is a global challenge. Every year, 1.2 million people die on the roads, the biggest killer of young people. I thank my honourable friend for bringing this to the House's attention. The UK, through the Department of Health, contributes £12.5 million to the Global Road Safety Facility and is represented on its Partnership Council. And we continue to work in this space on this truly important issue.
Final question, Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week, the BBC reported the death of Palestinian child Jad Jadala, shot in a West Bank refugee camp while Israeli soldiers watched him bleed to death. Violence against children around the world is increasing, including Ukraine, Sudan and now Iran. So what diplomatic action is she taking to prevent child death and protect surviving children from the lifelong trauma of war?
Mr Speaker, we've spoken many times about the risks to children in the West Bank and Gaza. It is a priority for this government. We raise it regularly with our Israeli counterparts, and I'm familiar with the report she references.